Okay, this is a video for some work that I did about 3 or 4 weeks ago where I looked into the idea of a multilingual bot. This is only a prototype and it demonstrates the receiving of user input in a range of different languages. It will then detect that language and then pass the user input to a Rasa NLU model which is specific to the language. So if it gets some English in, it will say that's English and send it to the English model. If it's French, it'll detect it's French and then pass it to the French model. Both models are trained to pick up, handle inputs on just a small number of intents. There are 4 intents. They're covering academic subjects, so it's history, biology, physics, and computing. And those were just arbitrarily chosen because they're quite easy to come up with a couple of example questions on there, and then translate those questions into other languages as well. So I just used Google Translate to make the translations and then trained the models. The reason I've started the code already is just because it takes quite a long time to run. As you'll see, it's just loading up at the moment. It has to use the medium or ideally even the large spacey language models, and as a result it takes a while to load up. It uses up a fair bit of RAM, and it's intensive to get that started. Once it's started, it actually performs quite well, so it should be ready any moment. I can hear my computer's fan whirring away, and one of the interesting side effects actually is that although it has a small number of examples for each intent, it doesn't have an exhaustive set of knowledge inside it, but it's still able to pick up quite effectively questions which are about a particular academic subject. And I believe that's because the word vectors are in the examples are then quite close to word vectors that relate to that topic in general. So if you've got something like biology, all sorts of words like heart, liver, lung, photosynthesis, all those sorts of things, they will all be in relatively close to the example ones, and therefore it will think that is the most likely intent. So it works quite effectively. If you had intents that are much more closely aligned, I think you'd probably need to work a bit more to get a good range of examples. So it's loaded up now, so I can just type in something like "tell me about mushrooms," good biology question there, and it's in English, so it's worked out handling biology in English. I can say when was the Reformation, and that's history. Excuse me. I could say what is the melting point of iron, it's physics, and what is a graphics card, and that is computing. So I've got some examples here in French which are basically just translated. They're not the exact same examples as I had before, but that one actually is one I reused, which is about the Reformation. So that's handling history, but it says it's in French, so it's correctly detected that. Let's see, we've got this one is interesting because it's how does a bird fly? You could argue that's almost biology as well, but when I run it through here, it actually thinks it's physics related. So some of these ones are near the cutoff between the two. This next one is what's the role of white blood cells in the immune system? So that's clearly a biology thing, and yes, it's picked up the subject and it knows it's French. There we go. And then what are the technologies underpinning the internet? And actually, funny enough, that's gone wrong, but that's yeah, I mean, there's some similarity between physics and computing. It's obviously close enough that it's misidentified it, but anyway, it's surprisingly good though with the small number of test cases. If you're obviously to do this on a more serious level, you would use a lot more training questions, and you would obviously then have to build up some sort of response mechanism in the language that you wanted, or have some facility to let you arbitrarily switch languages as you wanted to. But anyway, that's the basic prototype as a proof of concept really. The code is up on GitHub, so if you want to have a look, you can, and it's all available. You can download it, install it, and yeah, be interested in any thoughts about it. Okay.